This happened to me about a week ago. Honestly, it's one of the freakiest encounters I've ever had in my life. And a lot of people might think this is fake, and all I have is my word, but I swear on my life, and the life of everyone that I love, that this is true. I was scared out of my fucking mind, and I will remember this encounter until the day I die. Last week I took my dog to this fenced dog park. I tried to go around 5 or 6 because that's when the most people get off of work and bring their dogs. So there's usually a large amount of dogs for my puppy to socialize and play with. It rained earlier in the day but stopped, so I was surprised to see only one person in the dog park. I knew both him and his dog, and we chatted for a bit while our dogs chased each other around. Also worth mentioning, the atmosphere was so creepy. A low, thick fog covered the entire dog park. It was that horrible weather that's somehow both humid and cold, just a dreary, rainy fall day. It wasn't that dark yet, so when the guy and his dog left, I decided to stay for a while and play fetch with my dog. That was mistake number 1. I threw the ball around for a bit, and on one throw, something caught my eye. There was a man in all black, hood up, standing at the fence completely still, facing towards me. I couldn't see his face, so I didn't know if he was looking at me. I tried to brush it off as maybe he was just watching us play fetch. I do have a 5-month-old puppy after all, who is adorable and draws lots of attention from strangers. I threw the ball in his direction a few more times so that I could glance at him to see if he would move on, but he never did. At this point, I started to get pretty freaked out. I didn't want to stay alone in a dog park with only one entrance, and it was getting significantly darker at this point. I really wanted to get out of there, but in order to leave, I'd have to walk past this man. Here's a shitty diagram I drew, because it's hard to explain sometimes. The scale is fucked up and completely off in the diagram, but hopefully you get the gist of what it is. The dog park only has one entrance on one side. You have to walk the length of the dog park on this path in order to get where you park. Walking past him was the only way out. So I gathered my stuff and began to leave. I walked to the entrance, glancing at him every few seconds, but he's still standing completely still. But now he's turned towards me. I took out my phone and pretended to be talking to someone, saying things like, "Oh yeah, I'll be there in 20 minutes. 15? What? That's too soon. Okay, Dad, I'll try." The moment I left the dog park, he turned and started walking away towards the parking lot. I was relieved, but only for a moment. That's when I noticed he wasn't walking. He was shuffling, only a few feet at a time. Then he would stop completely, turn around and look at me, and then keep going. Then his walking changed. He started throwing his head back, looking up at the sky repeatedly, and taking huge strides forward. His movements were very bizarre, an exaggerated tiptoe-like walk. If you've ever read The Smiling Man, it reminded me of that. Except he was moving slow, not fast. The moment he started doing it, that story was the first thing to pop up in my head, and still every 5 to 10 feet or so, he would look back at me. I was walking behind him, slowly in the same direction towards my car. Needless to say, I was pretty much 100% convinced that I was going to be raped, stabbed, robbed, kidnapped, whatever. I was just scared to death. My whole body was tense and cold. I've never felt that kind of fear in my entire life. Like deep, horrible pits in your stomach. The kind of fear that made you feel as if you could die that night. Then suddenly, he turned sharp and ran into the trees alongside the path. I took this opportunity to pick up the pace and pass the spot where he had ran into the trees. This was mistake number 2. Barely seconds after I passed him, I heard a rustling, and he's coming out of the trees behind me, fast, no longer walking. Like the Smiling Man, a fast, curt power walk straight at me. This is where I noped the fuck out and started sprinting. I was only about 30 yards from my car. I scooped up my dog, which wasn't an easy feat while running, he's about 40 pounds, and jumped into the driver's seat, started my car, locked the door, peeled out of there as fast as I could. As I was backing up out of my parking space, the light shined for just a second on the man, who was standing at the end of the path, beginning of the parking lot, completely still, just staring. I was so shaken up, I didn't want to walk around at night for a few days. Even writing this has made me incredibly uncomfortable. I have told people that I frequently see there about the encounter, and now I make sure that I'm never the last person in the dog park. Creepy imitator of the Smiling Man? Let's never meet. Ever. Hi, this happened to my godmother, who I'm very close with. She and my mother have been friends since 4th grade, and this took place during the 70s, and my godmother was around 16 or 17 at the time. So one day she was doing some homework in the living room when the phone rang. Her mom picked it up, and before she could say anything, she got a funny look on her face and just started laughing. My godmother said, "What is it? Who was that?" Her mom said, "Someone just playing some music over the phone, probably a wrong number." A few days later, my godmother was home alone when the phone rang. She picked it up and the song "Hello, It's Me" by Todd Rundgren started playing. My godmother smiled and thought it was the guy that she was dating at the time. She hung up and the next day at school brought it up to the guy she was seeing. He looked confused and said he had never called her. She brushed it off as someone who had a crush on her. The phone calls were coming in about 5 times a day now, and she was both annoyed and freaked out. Her parents, however, just thought it was someone who liked her, and each time she picked up the phone, that song was playing. Finally, one day she answered the phone and she said, "Look, who are you? You've been driving me and my family insane for the past month, so knock it off." But that only seemed to make it worse, because now she was getting calls at around 1 in the morning. Fast forward about 2 months and this had been going on for a while, and one day my godmother decided to go to the record shop with some friends. While she was there, she noticed this middle-aged guy looking at her. She didn't think anything of it until he walked up close to her and started looking at some records, and then he takes a Todd Rundgren record, shows it to her, and starts whistling "Hello, It's Me," the song that played whenever she answered the phone. And with that, she told her friends that she didn't feel well and left. And just like that, the call stopped. I don't know what this guy's intentions were, but I know that they definitely were not good. So let me start off by saying, I know how incredibly stupid I was for walking out in the middle of the streets by myself so late at night. I was about 15 or 16 at the time, in a very rebellious phase in my life. I would sneak out at night and go partying with my friends as often as I could. Sometimes I would get picked up, and sometimes I would walk to my friend's house and we'd take off from there. Well, this night I got dropped off at the end of our outing at my friend's house and decided to walk home. Now, this was anywhere from 2 to 3 in the morning. I was fearless, typical teenage mentality. Nothing could ever happen to me. I was walking at a very brisk pace down a usual busy street, which was now empty, of course, when I noticed a car drive past me, and I thought nothing of it. Then I noticed that my brisk pace was catching up to the car, who was coming up at a snail's pace. I was assuming that it was waiting for me to catch up. I did, and walked past it. The guy inside was calling me, saying, "Hey, you need a ride?" I ignored and continued on my way. He keeps creeping on me, so I cross the street, so now I'm walking in the opposite way that traffic is going. I watch as he takes off and turns left into a small cross street up ahead, and I just assume he gave up, when I see a man walk up to the payphone that is in the corner of the cross street, and the hairs on my arm stand up straight. When I notice this man staring at me, with a phone in his ear, I realized this has to be the man from the car, pretending to use the phone. Before I got any closer to him, I darted across the street again. While I was running across the street, I saw the guy dump the fake phone call and walk down the same street he had come out of and jump into his car. By the time he had turned his car around to follow me again, I had ducked into some bushes around a building and saw him drive by. I was so shaken up, so I just stayed there, thinking of what to do next. Lucky for me again, cause I see him drive by again on the opposite side of the street. I decide not to go back to the main street and make my way home instead, via the smaller neighborhood streets. Luckily, I was close to my house at this point. I made it home safely, looking over my shoulder the entire time. I think this was the last time I walked around at night by myself. I keep thinking, what would have happened to me? So creepy potential kidnapper? Let's never meet again. When I was a senior in high school, I got a job at a small family-owned restaurant with shitty management. My brothers both worked there, and my sister and I are twins, and we didn't do much without each other, so we both applied. They were in desperate need of more waitresses, and my brothers put in a good word for both of us. Needless to say, we both got the job. Anyways, my brother became management in the short time I worked there, and everybody loved him. But there was a super bitch waitress named JC that worked there, and she was best friends with the boss's girlfriend, so she got undeserved special treatment. This woman was lazy, rude, and she made all the other employees do all the work she didn't want to. We all hated her. So anyways, JC gets promoted to head waitress, and that pretty much pissed all of us off. But I was 18 and desperately needed the money for college, so I sucked it up. I digress. One night my twin sister, we'll call her Sam, has to take a table with one man dining in. I thought it was a little odd that this man was dining in alone, but I figured maybe I was judging a little too quickly. This man was older and looked pretty tough, and was giving me all types of creepy vibes. I'm older than my sister, and figured maybe I was just being overprotective, and went back to my own business. But not too long after, I happened to be walking past her as she was taking this man's order, and I heard him call her sweetie, and don't ask me why, but my blood turned to ice and alarms started going off in my head. So naturally, I waited in the back until my sister came to get the drinks he ordered. She came in, and I took a look at her face and knew that something was definitely wrong. I ask her what's up, and she explains to me that the man is giving her the creeps, and he keeps telling her how beautiful she is, but that she's just trying to get through it, because how long could this guy possibly be sitting in the restaurant alone? I decided to keep a close eye on her for the rest of the night. Anyways, an hour later, the man has his food and my sister is going to check up on him. But when she comes back, she tells me that this guy has been asking her where she lives and how old she is and what school she goes to. Now my sister is very smart, but I guess the fear of being impolite to a customer gave her momentary brain lag or something, because after dodging all his other questions, she told him what high school we went to. At this point I was freaking out, and I'm like, that's it, he's clearly making her uncomfortable, it's time to get her out of the situation. So I tell our bitch head waitress what's going on, and she literally treats us like we're both insane, tells us to stop being overdramatic, and forces my sister to continue with him. So I was like, fuck that, no way. I end up switching with her and taking her table so she wouldn't say anything stupid out of fear again. My sister and I are fraternal twins, but people say we look identical, and normally customers confuse us all the time. Not this guy. As soon as I got there, he asked me, what happened to the other waitress? The fact that he, a complete stranger, was so focused on my sister that he could tell that I wasn't her was fucking creepy, and I can't even describe the way I felt when he said that to me. I told him that she was busy and that I would be taking his table for the rest of the night, and let me tell you, he wasn't happy about that. More red flags. He tried to make conversation with me for the rest of the time that I was there. I continued to shut his ass down every time he talked. I cashed him out, and me and my sister ended up quitting shortly after. JC got fired, thank the Lord, but not before everyone I worked with during the period of time quit and changed jobs. Anyways, a place that doesn't take employee safety seriously is not a place for me, and definitely not a place for my sister. So creepy customer obsessed with my twin sister? Let's never meet again, because next time I won't be a waitress who needs a job, and I promise I will kick your ass. This happened about 2 years ago when I was driving into Williamsburg, Brooklyn to see my boyfriend at the time. I was from New Jersey, so normally I would drive in or take the train. This time I decided to drive in. It was a Sunday evening, and as usual, I was stuck in the gridlock traffic getting onto Canal Street. It was one of those traffic jams where the light turns green and you still aren't moving. Anyways, I know New York is full of weirdos. Hell, even New Jersey is too. I've had my share of encounters. Plus, I grew up in a pretty unsavory neighborhood, so things don't really get to me, but this one struck a chord. As I was sitting in my car, I was looking outside of the side window, not paying much attention to the front car, since my car couldn't even move anyways. Little did I know that someone was leaning over the right on top of my windshield, staring at me. I looked forward and was startled, to say the least. My heart sank into my stomach. Looking at me, he was a crazy homeless man. And I know that homeless people are pretty common in New York, only this man was different. He was a black man with caked on peach colored paint smeared all over his face. The paint almost looked like the makeup they use on dead people at funeral homes, waxy and very artificial. He had a huge Joker-like smile on his face, and his eyes were bulging out. They were huge and red, and they were staring straight into me. It literally felt like his eyes were swords penetrating into my heart. The man was also breathing heavily, as with each breath his shoulders would rise. He must have been there for at least 30 seconds without me noticing. This was so unexpected, and I didn't know what to do. What I found even more strange about this whole situation was that he was pressing some sort of coin on my windshield. I decided to man up and take control of the situation and started yelling at him to move, pretending to be pissed off and annoyed to hide the fact that I was creeped the hell out. He did move away, slowly, but continued staring at me until he was out of sight. When I got into Brooklyn, I told my boyfriend about the whole thing because it struck some sort of chord with me, and I was extremely shaken up. He didn't seem to care much, but I almost felt as if this creepy man was still thinking about me, and sort of knew that his presence resonated with me, and he found pleasure in it. Regardless, I'm wondering if anyone else in New York has ever seen this man before.